my line all day. Well, I'm an old pipeline, I lay my line all day. I got us a little bit of chill on waiting to draw my pay. Like a one-eyed cat peeping in a seafood store. I'm like a one-eyed cat peeping in a seafood store. You don't want me around, baby, I won't mess around with you no more. 'Cause I'm an old pipeline, I lay my line all day. I'm an old pipeline, I lay my line all day. I got a little bit of chill on the waiting to draw my pay. Come on, baby. Raise your window high. If you see me coming, better raise your window high. And when you see me leaving, better hang your little head and cry. You know why? 'Cause I'm an old pipeliner, I lay my line all day. Well, I'm an old pipeliner, I lay my line all day. I got 45 children waiting to draw my pay. Come on, baby.
Come on, buddy.
Whoa.
Well, I'm an old pipeliner, I lay my line all day. I'm an old pipeliner, I lay my line all day. I got 45 children on waiting to draw my pay.
Hey everybody, Norm over here, and I am amidst some real greatness. I've got my buddy David Becker, one of the great jazz guitar players of all time. I've got Nick Dias, our own Nick Dias, playing acoustic guitar, killing it, and the great Vince Gill, my buddy, and I'm so honored, buddy, that you have agreed to do this. And Vince is one of the most recognizable and plays so many styles so well, and he's the most decorated country artist, I believe, of all time. And that's not just for guitar playing, but that's for vocals. If you were wearing an army suit and you had like stripes every time they gave you an award, you wouldn't be able to walk.
It'd be a big uniform, wouldn't it? That's for the full-grown men.
That's right. Well, you know, I just got to say, and one thing I just want to bring up is that, you know, it was really, really sweet of Vince to just say, when I asked him if he would do this, he was right on it. And, you know, I've known Vince since the 70s when he was with Pure Prairie League and when he lived out here. And now he's living in Nashville, but he's out here playing with a group. What's that group called again?
Call them the Eagles, I believe.
Oh, yeah. I knew it was some kind of bird group.
Took me 60 years to get a good gig.
There you go. Well, let me tell you, he is the logical fit for that band because vocally and instrumentally, he is the perfect guy. I mean, I don't know what they would do if they didn't find you. And you must have been like, you know, on everybody's lips the minute that spot came available. And so you're out here doing the some rehearsals for.
Yeah.
Where are you guys going to be playing?
Well, we're playing a couple of shows in Vegas at MGM Grand, and you know, back to getting to do this. You know, it really came because of a tragedy, the passing of Glenn and my longtime friend, and I think a lot of people really didn't even expect the band to press on without Glenn, and then think they all kind of came to the realization that these songs are really important to people, maybe even more so than the people singing them. And so everybody's been really gracious about welcoming me and letting me be a part of this. And, you know, I know better than anybody I'd rather hear Glenn sing these songs, but that's not possible.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's this band is such an American treasure and one of the most legendary bands worldwide of all time. So, and the songs are what you're honoring, really, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's what's going to live forever, not us.
So,
Well, the thing that's so cool is that, you know, there's very few bands that you could go to see an evening performance and kind of know almost every tune there and love every tune. I mean, you know, a lot of bands, they have a couple hits and then a lot is filler. Not so with Eagles. I mean, it's like seeing the Beatles or the Stones.
I mean,
or,
it's you're in the highest echelon of what really makes people timeless are their songs. You know, and that's the great separator in most artistry. That's why James Taylor is still relevant today.
love James Taylor.
Songs are brilliant, you know, and it goes on and on and on. Everywhere you go, people that are still out there doing it, it's because they had great songs.
Yeah, it's part of the fabric of that tradition of American songwriting, isn't it?
And great taste. I mean, like, you know, when George Harrison would take a solo in the Beatles, it was as important as the song itself. I mean, he just played the perfect stuff.
Absolutely. Well, that goes back to what we talked about in the shop about jazz and all these styles, is the songs. Yeah. That's why people still play All the Things You Are, and it's how many years old, you know. Those composers, man. You know, and it's the same way, that's that generation, the Beatles and now the Eagles and all that stuff. It has such an impact musically that it's bigger than the people making it, as you said.
And Dave, you're primarily known for jazz playing, but you originally started playing rock like every other young kid.
I'm a big fan of Vince. I mean, I got to see you play with Pure Perry League and followed you for a long time.
You're that old, man?
I was in diapers. You know,
yeah, me too.
We will be again.
But it was depends, I think. You know.
Actually, so how old were you when you joined Pure Prairie League?
I think
you were a youngster, right?
21, something like that. I moved out here at 19 to play with a great musician named Byron Berline. I don't know if you remember that.
Absolutely.
But I was a young bluegrass kid and loved playing that kind of music, and just kind of stumbled into the Pure Prairie League gig after a couple of years with Byron, and then just kind of always had dreams and aspirations to be an artist myself someday, and jumped into the world of country music in the early 80s. Tell people I couldn't prove it. I made records for a long time, but couldn't prove it because nobody had them. But I kind of kept after it, and everything worked out.
But that must have been quite a proving ground, the Pure Prairie League at the age of 21.
Yeah,
wow,
it was fun. I mean, we had a big hit when I was in the band called Let Me Love You Tonight. It probably wasn't as big a hit as Amy, of course, but it was fun because all of a sudden I was on American Bandstand. And Solid Gold and all these. Everybody had a talk show. Mike Douglas and Merv Griffin and John Davidson and Tony Tennille and hundreds of them. It felt like we did all of them. You know?
Yeah, you probably did, didn't you?
Well, we might have.
You know, and one thing that's, you know, you were talking about Byron, but I mean, you know, the one thing, you know, about your career, and I've known you since you were a young man, and I mean, we don't see each other that often because you're in Nashville now and all that, but I have to say, you've played with all of your idols and legendary people that you've admired your whole life.
Yeah, my real, if I had a dream as a young musician, I wanted to be a session player. I didn't have the hairbrush in the mirror trying to be Elvis. You know, I had my head down. I was trying to figure out how to learn.
I don't know. I saw some videos of you back in the day, like Elijah J. And you were kind of a matinee idol looking, kind of guy.
Pretty for a minute, but through all of that, what I really wanted to do was be a supporting cast kind of guy, and to date, I think I've worked on maybe over 1,000 artists' records.
Wow.
Playing and singing, and even though I had a nice run of success, I didn't want to stop doing what I'd always loved doing, was just being part of the process. And that's one thing Don said about hiring me to play with a band. He said he knows how to be in a band.
Yeah.
You know, it just makes sense.
I was going to say, all those pictures, you always had a Telecaster strapped around your neck.
Yeah, I like that old white telly.
Yeah. A lot of people love that thing. Have you still got that one?
Of course.
Oh, of course, yeah.
You got a lot of guitars, right?
Yes, from you as well.
There you go. Thank you. It's not an advertisement. We don't advertise at Norm's Rare Guitars. Well, maybe sometimes
we just
do.
did.
We got
There you
the
go.
mini Pearl here, so we're all good.
So, one thing I wanted to say too, and, I saw this a while back, and it, I was, really touched by it. You're a really soulful singer, and I mean country music and R&B, and I've always been more of an R&B guy, but there's, the soulfulness and the truthfulness of it is something that I think it's Americana and it's American music at its finest.
I think they're the same.
Yeah.
I've always felt like they were the same, and it's a little bit different groove,
Right.
just all of that. But there was a great learning experience of that in the early '60s when Ray Charles did a record of all country songs.
Right.
And he went to his folks and record company and everybody and said, "I want to make a country record." This was 1961, 1962.
I have that record.
Right.
Fabulous.
And they said, "You're out of your mind." You said, "Why on earth would you?" Because most people would see those two worlds as far apart as possible, and they really
Right.
it never were.
Yep.
That's what bears out in this documentary that Ken Burns has done on country music. But the record Ray did, what it did, it gave country music maybe its greatest. I'm trying to think of the right word to use, but
Crossover?
affirmation.
Affirmation.
It gave a really great affirmation to how soulful country music really was.
And
when
how
put in the
American
hands
it
of a
was.
soul singer,
Yeah.
And they said, "Why do you want to do a country record?" And he goes, "I like the stories.
There you go.
I like the stories they tell in those songs." Same thing Charlie Parker used to say. He said he'd load up the jukebox with nickels and play nothing but country music, and all the cats would say, "What are you doing?" He
Yeah.
goes, "Man, I love the stories.
Yeah.
I love the stories."
And you got to play and with who I think is the most soulful country singer of all time, your buddy George Jones, who
Well,
passed
yeah,
away.
yeah. I mean, it's ridiculoly how soulful he sang,
Yeah.
and on par with anybody in an R&B world, or. But like I said, when we can tear down all the perceptions we sometimes have of what something is, of what we have to identify it. We're such creatures of habit that we have to know what
Have to
labels
label
are,
everything.
jeans, that you can wear,
Yeah.
that they're cool or this or that. But man, close your eyes and just listen.
But when you get down to the DNA of
Yeah,
it, it's
amen.
a lot of shared chromosomes, isn't it?
And the real beauty of it is it all stems from hard times.
Yep.
It all country music, R&B music, none of that was a bunch of fat cats that were knocking it out of the park. It was all people that were struggling to get by.
That was the
picking
great thing
cotton
about
and-
that
yeah,
Ken
I mean, it
Burns
was-
thing, and you were talking about Hank Williams on that, and man, that was a hard scrabble life they came
Yeah.
from, wasn't it?
They all came from the hardest of hard times.
Yeah.
Well, and this probably is true for a lot of young folks that, idolize you guys and all that kind of stuff. Be careful of what you wish for, because everybody's got some heartache in their life.
Yeah.
And, it's stuff that, we all face. There's always some trouble, whether it's having a broken heart or, you expecting something from somebody in your family that doesn't happen. And, you would like to be able to control all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't. So people go, boy, I wish I was Vince Gill. And, what do you say to somebody like that?
Well, I just think that the real gift that I've been given from music as a listener, just as a listener, is I want to be moved by music. I don't want to be impressed.
Yep.
When somebody can move me with just the subtlest of things, that's what creates emotion. And music
I agree.
was meant to be emotional. I've never been the party song guy and
Yep.
all that. I love the melancholy, and I go to music for to feed,
Yeah.
the soul.
Well, it brings that out of you,
Couple
but
of
I think you
chords and
have
the
to
right
have
words, and you're
Yeah, but
that's
you
it.
have to have a little bit of that pain in your life, I think, to kind of, just be able to relate to it and
Absolutely.
pass it along.
I mean, there's so many great songs and so many great lines, but think about Hank Williams,
Yeah.
Why can't I free your doubtful mind and melt your cold, cold
Cold
heart?
heart, yeah.
It's like, that's
Well,
just-
That says it all right
Yeah.
there, doesn't it? Yeah.
Well, and kind of lightening up the conversation at Taste, you have a tune that cracks me up. Don't want to kiss the lips.
It's hard to kiss the lips at night that chew your ass out all day long.
Yeah, you know, I mean, and that is so great. What's the story behind that? Because that it's so cool. You know,
Well, it's a song I wrote with Rodney Crowell. Rodney's the first guy I met when I moved to Los Angeles in 1976, and it's actually something my father said. You know,
Really?
in jest, he said, "You need to write this song, son." And it's a crack up, and I promised him I would, and I never did, and he passed away. And I was
Well,
hanging
you
out
honored
with
it.
Yeah, and I was hanging out with Rodney one day, and we were stuck on a song, and I said, "You know, my dad had a neat idea for a song," and I told Rodney the title. He could pick him up off the floor. He goes, "That's way better than what we're working on. Let's finish it for your dad." So,
could you do just a little bit of that, man? I
Oh,
mean, I'm
God.
sorry to throw it at you, but it's so cool.
She
and
used to call me baby. I thought she was such a lady. But my, how things have changed since times moved on. I'd give her my last dollar, but now all she'll do is holler. Oh, my life has become a country song. Let's see. It's blank. Found out.
See, I just throw them on the spot here. You know, I like to
but,
throw them right in the fire.
It gets to, this and that, and then he finally sings. But it's hard to kiss the lips at night. That chew your ass out all day long.
Yeah. And then talking about the wife's ass,
Yeah, well.
there was another, you could land a small plane on her.
Yeah.
ass,
Yeah.
so it's,
Just some good natured hillbilly humor.
How much fun was that working with Rodney Crowell?
Well, we unfortunately we made a video of that song.
I love it.
And we both dressed up in drag.
Yeah.
To
Oh,
be each
really?
other's girlfriend, yeah, because we're too self-respecting to ask a woman to play a
Yeah,
version of that song.
I should think so. Yeah.
You have that goatee now. You weren't sporting that right during that.
No,
There you
I'm
go.
just covering up a chin, Norton.
No, there you go.
Now there were a few bands covered that song as well. weren't
Really?
there? Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
But it was
Yeah.
crack up. I remember it got nominated for a Grammy. I was sitting with Rodney, and in the same row was Quentin Tarantino. He's
Yeah.
sitting next to us. And they're announcing with the big voice of God, and nominated for Song of the Year, and went through all the listings. And it's hard to kiss the lips at night, to chew your ass out all day. And Quentin just fell on the floor. And goes, "That's the greatest thing I've ever heard."
Well, we just
I'm
wanted to
surprised he
lighten up
hasn't
the
showed up in one of
conversation.
his
I
films
know.
yet. Yeah,
That'd
yeah.
be great.
And my buddy David over here, he has played with a lot of jazz luminaries and all that. And some of the people you've played with.
Oh, yeah, I worked with Ron Carter, worked with Pat Metheny, just a whole bunch of people.
Joe Diorio.
Joe Diorio, Larry Coryell, all the guitar guys.
Yeah, yeah. Well-
and other guys too. Over the years, I've had the great pleasure to share the stage with Miles.
Oh, wow.
Chick Corea. So that was my
Wow.
first big gig. Was opening up for Miles Davis when I was 22 or 23. So.
Yeah, this area of the world has just spawned so many off the charts great musicians and guitar players. I moved out here at 19. The first person I went to see was Larry Carlton,
Oh, okay.
the Santa Monica Civic, and it.
Well, if that didn't discourage you,
Oh man, no, it was so inspiring, just to hear the sound and all of that what he did. And I had a 335 that I got when I was 10. My parents got for me. Had the trapeze tailpiece and all that stuff. And I immediately went to somebody and said, "Please put a stop tailpiece on this thing."
I want to be
I
just
get
like
that
Larry.
sustain, yeah.
That's it.
But yeah, I mean, you go to the Baked Potato and hear him and Robin Ford, a guy named Carlos Vega. There was so many
Carlos.
great players here. It was like,
Robin's a good buddy of mine.
Yeah.
He actually played at my daughter's wedding, which was
yeah.
kind of cool.
he's become a Nashvilleian now.
Yeah.
He's taken the plunge. He's moved
Because
to Nashville.
he was
with
in like
Pal Renzo.
Ojai and, and like, it's kind of like a hippy dippy area there, down by Santa Barbara.
Now, there's a
And-
guitar player.
Oh yeah.
I just
oh,
hold
yeah.
one.
One of the most, one of the most tasteful and
Yeah, buddy.
he's singing real good too, So, but one thing I wanted to bring up is that I'm buddies with Joe Bonamassa and his bass player Michael Rhodes. you know, we talk about music a lot because he likes a lot of R&B and stuff like that. And I played him this thing from these girls, the Queeby Sisters, you know, because I figured he might dig that. And his answer to me, and he loved it, was, man, you got to see the Time Jumpers. And tell us about them, you know, what the deal is.
Well, basically, it's a Western swing band, you know, very reminiscent of what Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys were in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, and that era of great swing music. You know, even country music had a big band element of being inspired by Basie and those kinds of people. And they didn't necessarily have brass instruments on top, but they had voicings and fiddles and steel guitars. And it was kind of a little more Western interpretation of big band music.
Yeah, and Paul Franklin,
and three fiddlers, and it's a big band. There's 11 of us, and we just go play the music we love and miss.
Oh, that's fun.
And it's interchangeable a little bit, too, depending on who's in town,
yeah,
right?
I mean, everybody's working. I've been gone a bunch, so every now and then they'll get us. Everybody's subbable, I guess. There's a great story. My favorite story out here. Dear friend of mine, Emery Gordy, was a great bass player, played with Elvis and Emmylou and all these great people. And he was on a date with all the big shots, and it was a film date, and it wasn't a lot of fun. And he, after the first run through, he stands up and he says, "Is it too late to get a sub?" And Tommy Tedesco looked over and says, "Sit down, you are one."
Tommy was a great guy. He was a friend of mine too. Now that you brought up Tommy, I got to tell you one kind of funny story with Tommy. Tommy was a notorious gambler, and he was kind of a wild man. He was hysterically funny, and he was probably, at the time that he was alive, I don't know if anybody has surpassed us now, but he was the most recorded guitar player of all time. And he came into my store one day, and he said, "Norm, you know, all my stuff is in cartage. I need like just that inexpensive classical that plays." And I said, "Tommy, you know, I just got this thing, you know, I paid $100 for it. It's just some cheap no-name, but it actually plays and sounds good." And Tommy said, "I'll tell you what, I'll play you gin to 200, and I'll either give you $200 for it or you give it to me for nothing." And I figured, you know, all I could lose is $100, and I'd have a story with Tommy Tedesco. So I said, "What the hell?" You know, so I played him, and I beat him. And Tommy was a really good gin player, but that day the cards are coming my way. Right. So I have the story, and I got the $200. But he was a character and a half, and what a great player. And if you ever saw the movie The Wrecking Crew, there's some really great stuff in there, and his son did it kind of as a tribute to him.
That's right.
And
great movie.
And it's just one of those ones that everybody should see.
Some of the best playing that I saw Tommy do was on the Fernwood Tonight. Do you remember that show?
Yeah, all the time.
That was unbelievable.
That was Martin Mull.
Martin Mull,
You'll love this. Martin Mull got to play the Grand Ole Opry one time, 30, 40 years ago. And he went out on stage with a big, giant jazz box, you know, and he goes, "Ladies and gentlemen," he goes, "I'd like to do something right now that's never been done at the Grand Ole Opry. I'd like to play a major 7. It was so inside, but so funny.
So
I loved watching
He was
that.
a character.
Mary Hartman, and that Fernwood Tonight, it turned into America Tonight.
Yeah, I asked Tommy about that, how he got the gig and how that was, and he said they wanted a guy who looked like he played guitar at night and was a lumberjack. You know, and Colin Bailey on drums, man, it was amazing. Frank Duvall,
Was it Happy Kind and the Mirth Makers?
Yeah, Mirth Makers.
Yeah. I love that show. That was, I don't know if that was that nationwide or was that just down here?
No, it was just around here, I think.
It did it. They syndicated it eventually. That's when they went America Tonight, then it became this.
Cool.
So let me ask you something. You guys, I know you're going to stick around because this is a really good one, and these guys can really play. Can you guys just take us out with a little bit of something? You know, Vince, just start something, see if these guys can follow, and we'll just take it out.
They'll have a hard time with it.
No, I don't think so. Please stick around, guys. You're going to love this. The great Vince Gill, David Becker, and Nick Dias.
The face of an angel, pretty eyes that shine. I lie awake at night, wishing you were mine. I'm standing here holding the biggest heartache in town. Whenever you come around, oh, I get weak in the knees and I lose my breath. smile, the world turns upside down. Whenever you come around.
Absolutely beautiful. Guys, stick around. There's more coming. Vince, thank you so much again.
Yeah,
I
buddy.
can't thank you enough. Nick, David, thank you guys.
It's a pleasure.
Good fun.
Stick around, guys.
Do something like that, just like a straight.
Sure.
I wanted to get the he's talking and it was like things started happening in my head. It was like I can write
No, you're good. Yeah.
All right. Keep going, Vince. Sounding good, buddy. Hey, we're back at the Norman's Rare Guitars podcast. Some of the greatest players on earth right here sitting around me. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm adding a little mediocrity to some greatness here. So, but I love it, and I love being around these guys. And, you know, I've been blessed all my life to be around some fantastic musicians. And like with Vince, I mean, I knew Vince when he was a younger man, and I was still old, I think, at that time. I don't know. But I've got to watch how, you know, his career has kind of blossomed over the years. And it's just so cool to watch. And I've seen that with a lot of people. I'm buddies with Lenny Kravitz. I've seen that kind of happen with him. And Joe Bonamassa I've known since he was like 12 years old. And, you know, it's just really cool to see this happen. I've been blessed being in California, being at the center of the music universe, and having guitars, which is kind of like, I'm almost like a dope dealer to all these guys. I kind of hate to say it. I don't-
The pusher, man. Yeah.
So,
That's true.
you know, so I've known these guys as they were coming up and all that. And, you know, a lot of them, you know, I recognize the great talent right from the beginning. And then to see their careers kind of blossom and just kind of take off like it has with you, Vince. I mean, it's great to see. It's really heartwarming. And I'm really privileged to have been able to see a lot of this stuff happen.
Well, let me interject something. I don't want to talk about you in front of you, but Vince is one of those people like Tom Petty was that sort of hits every generation from, like, you know, but the punk rock generation, everything on with rock and rollers, country people, because you've straddled all these different types of music, and you've always been there with that Telecaster around your neck, rocking away. It's like everybody digs it, you know what I mean?
I just, you know, I'm a chameleon. I
Yeah.
love all of it, and I think that's just me. You know, there's some people that only like jazz, some people that only like country music, some people that only like R&B, but not me. You know, if it's great, I'll find something great.
Was
in
there any
everything.
particular era, like when from Pure Prairie League and the Cherry Bombs, was there any particular time you were like, wow, this is really where I'm at?
Well, I just think that I'm glad I grew up in the era I grew up in. I'm 62, and I got to see the tail end of the best of the stuff of the 50s, and
Right.
then the British invasion, and then them kind of reinvigorating a lot of black blues music. You
Yeah,
know, Muddy
absolutely.
Waters and people like that, and them loving that and kind of shining a light on them again, and it just kind of how it's always been kind of back and forth, and everybody and kind of loving something they do and being inspired by it. And
I think that was almost kind of us Brits' job, was to recycle some of your music and shine a light back on it and go, Man, this is fantastic. We did that with country a lot as
Sure,
well. I mean,
exactly.
there's
Carl
so many.
Perkins and people like that, you
Yeah.
know, I mean, but,
But there's so many English people that love country music, and that's a. Has country always been the bigger influence, or?
I don't know about that. I think, like I said, it's been all of it because I was the
Across the
youngest
board.
kid in our family. I had a big brother and a big sister, and my mom and dad. So it was a long time before I could kind of find my own way to buy my own records. So I
Did
had
they
to
play
listen.
music too?
Oh,
Anybody
gosh,
else
yeah.
know?
Musical family, right?
My dad played poorly. He loved to play, but wasn't great and had a nice voice.
He could have been in a band with me, probably. So-
But my grandmother played piano, and that's my first memory of ever hearing music was her playing "How Great Thou Art" on the piano, a great old hymn. And
Yeah.
so it was just all around. My big brother would kind of play chords for me when I was learning, and I could learn to play these little lead things, and so I heard it all.
Yeah.
And, Nick was mentioning that Telecaster, but, I have seen you with so many guitars, and I know you're involved with Songbirds, which is a terrific
Yeah.
museum in Chattanooga, and I've seen some of the pictures of some of the stuff, and I've sold some guitars to you guys down there, and it's pretty amazing. It's worth seeing, right?
Yeah, they just asked me if I would kind of be a spokesperson for it, a little bit of an ambassadorship kind of thing, and I never, had nothing to do with the collection or putting it together or all. But if anybody that's nuts about these instruments, they should go see that because this guy amassed a remarkable collection of instruments, and it was all pristine instruments. There no refins, no this or that or alterations.
Tell me something that, I've seen you with so many guitars yourself.
Yeah.
I would ask you, some of your favorites, but I know there's a lot of different ones, right?
Well, there is. He mentioned that white Tele. I got that 41 years ago at a little music store, and it's my first Telecaster. And I'd always, I'd heard James Burton play and Albert Lee play, and I just was in love with the sound and the way those guys played was reminiscent.
picking thing, yeah.
Was reminiscent of bluegrass picking and flat picking and stuff. So it made sense to me, and so that's the first Telecaster I bought, and I bought another 15 Blackguards since then, and none of them can
You got
hang
one
with
for
the white
me
one.
back in the day,
A 57, I still have
Yeah.
that. I played that with Roseanne all the time and Rodney. And then little by little, I'd pick up something great. I've got a really neat 59 slabboard Strat that Dwayne Eddy's son sold me, that Dwayne had brand new in 1959. And
Cool.
it's the best sounding
That's
Strat
good.
I've ever
That's
heard.
good
Yeah,
provenance.
I've heard you
So,
play that one. That
just-
sounds amazing.
I try to find, I'm always trying to up the game a little bit and find a better one if I can.
You don't like acoustic guitars, do you?
Only a lot. I figure, I'm not a toy guy. I don't have another house somewhere. I don't have a boat. I don't have cars. I just buy old guitars. I love them, and I've got a great collection, and I get to write them off my taxes, and I use them. They get
A
to have a
practical
musical
kind of
life.
fella.
There you go.
I mean, they have a musical life.
But tell
That's
me,
good.
tell me some. What is the kind of the thing about the old instruments with you that you love them so much? Because there's, it's sort of there's kind of you can't really describe in words exactly what it is that the old guitars have that the new ones don't. And they're making some great guitars now.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, some of the makers are making fine guitars, but I think most people point back to the old wood. Those instruments were made with really old wood, old growth wood, and there's no more old growth wood anymore.
They're just full of character, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're so old by the time they became guitars that there's just something special about them. And I know that a lot of people would say a lot of the big companies, to make more money, they made more instruments. They started, like with Martin, I was told that between 1833 and 1997, they made 750,000 instruments total. Wow. In 160 years. And in the last 20 years, they've made twice that many.
Yeah.
I believe it.
And-
Well,
But they're making some of the best stuff they've made in 50 years right now.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Killing it.
I think what's kind of cool, it'll take a little while to age. I mean, they have that artificial aging thing, which is cool, and their instruments are really good.
Yeah.
But, there is no replacement for wood that was 100 years old before it ever became an instrument.
No.
Yeah.
And,
But you
like
also have to
that
play the
Telecaster.
guitars.
Yeah.
That's the thing too. I worked with Chris Martin from Martin Guitars.
Yeah.
I did clinics with him when I was a kid, and learned a lot about guitar building. And you can put an old D45 in a case and put it under a bed, but if it's not played, it's
Yeah.
not going to work itself in. So you need to. Those guitars were played. Those
They need to
vintage
vibrate, and they need to live
Yeah.
and breathe.
Yeah.
But that
And they
doesn't
were
count
made
for
so-
Telecasters, does it? Like your
you know what's
that
funny?
Ash Buddy,
What's funny is you can take 10 of them all from the same year, and they all
they all sound different. Yeah.
Well, now
exactly.
everything is those CNC machines, so they kind of try to get a certain formula and kind of try to duplicate exactly, and it's machines that are building them. But back in the day, were these guys that were craftsmen, and they were building individual guitars, and every one of them had something slightly different.
Well, it was a guy eyeballing it. I mean, they were doing it sort
Yeah.
of the best job
Tapping
they
it
could
for
without.
tone.
Yeah.
But here's the real affirmation to me, is it's all about these.
Oh yeah,
You know,
I don't care what guitar you have.
You're
If
exactly
you can't
right.
play it, I mean,
I can
you know.
take that guitar he's playing, and I'm going to sound like me. He could take this
Right.
guitar, he's going to sound like him.
Unfortunately, I'm going to take both guitars. And I'm going to sound like me. So.
But that's what's beautiful, you know. A guitar kind of makes you play it like it wants to be played.
Right.
Yep.
You know, maybe not as hard as you'd like to play because it doesn't respond.
You know that
Uh,
Chet Atkins story about Chet playing the guitar and someone
Oh,
said,
yeah.
"Man, that guitar sounds great." And Chet put it on the sofa and said, "How's it
How's
sound
How's it
now?"
sound now? Yeah. It's like, yeah. I was like Mick Ronson as well, you know, one of our English guitar
Mm-hmm.
greats. He was the same. He could pick up a $30 telly and
It just sounded
wow,
great.
that was Mick right there. Yeah,
So much in the
it's
hands.
all in the fingers,
It's
isn't
in
it?
the
Yeah.
mitts.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think the finer instruments allow you to do what you do. That's just what it is. If it allows you to express yourself and your personality comes through, then of course the instrument is a vehicle. But you know, it's like Vince said, we can play any guitar and sound like us.
Well, it's in the hands, but it's also in the brain a bit too, because I mean, it's you know, you think about what you play, and you know, there's guys who can just run scales and blaze, but it doesn't do anything for me. I mean, for me personally, it's great that they can do it, but you know, it's like what we're saying with George Harrison or Mike Campbell with Tom Petty or Joe Walsh with the Eagles and any of those guys. It's they think musically, and that is what's so cool.
You're exactly right. You can hum the majority of the solos on an Eagles record or a Beatles record
Yeah.
or a Creedence record, you know, and,
Yep.
and it wasn't about, you know, I got that lesson right off the bat when I started doing sessions. And, you know, I was playing something and I played my little thing, and the guy pushed the talk back. He said, "That was great, man. That's really great. So let's try it again." He said, "This time play me half of what you know." And it was just such a great learning experience,
Yeah.
you know.
Dumb it up a little bit.
If you can say what needs to be said with 3 notes, why would you play 6
Right.
or 9 or 12? You know.
Well, it's a great thing, and you know, I just wanted to talk about the instruments, and then I want to talk about this Ken Burns documentary because again, it is so good, and everything he does is amazing. I mean, you said how long was he working on that? The country music.
8.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah. And as somebody that's lived the majority of their life in the world of country music, you know, we got looked down upon pretty seriously in our history. You know, even in the earliest days, the Dust Bowl days, when people migrated out here just to try to make a living and feed their families, you know, they were called Okies, and it was meant as a derogatory term. You know, they didn't mean it kindly.
Right,
Yeah.
but you know what? What about the blues musicians? What about the jazz musicians?
I know, but
jazz musicians still take a lot of crap.
They all
Even
take
from
a lot.
me, I take this Spinal Tap joke, and I always say it. I say the jazz musicians try to avoid all the good notes, so, but I don't mean it because I mean I really do love jazz and great anything is written, but none of it got respect in the beginning.
Not
right?
really, and that's what's beautiful about the way Ken and his team told this story. It's almost been going for 100 years, close to 100 years, and it finally gave us some dignity. It gave us some respect. It gave us a really beautiful interpretation because he wasn't one of us in a sense. You know, if he would have been one of us that would have been a big country music fan his whole life, it might have been a little slanted towards this or slanted towards that, and he just told the truth.
Yeah.
Which is really refreshing. And the other thing that really comes to light in this documentary is within the community of musicians, of creative people. There was never a color line. There was never a segregation problem. It was, I love what you play. Jimmy Rogers learned everything he learned from black field workers.
Yeah.
And A.P. Carter had a black gentleman that went with him to find songs. T. Tot Payne was the guy that taught Hank Williams how to play the guitar, a black gentleman.
Right.
D.
And there
Ford
was-
Bailey, one of the first Opry stars, was a black gentleman. Lil Hardin played on Jimmy Rogers records, who was married to Louis Armstrong. And it just, throughout the entire history of this, it paints that so eloquently, and
That
it makes
bit
you
was
proud.
fascinating. about
Musicians
the,
didn't see the color,
Uh-uh.
and
the,
you know,
the Opry tour when they took when they took that gentleman you just mentioned out, and they said, well, if he's not eating here, none of us are eating here.
Yeah, that's exactly.
well,
right.
you know, Don Peake, you know, was who's a buddy of mine, and we were talking, and we did a podcast with Don, and Don said he got a call from Ray Charles' handler or his manager or
Yeah.
whoever was hiring the musicians, and he called Don, and they were trying out a whole bunch of guitar players, and the whole band was entirely black. And when the guy said to Don, you know, how would you like to play with the Ray Charles band? Don said, well, I'm white. And he said, Ray don't give a damn, man. You know, if you can play, we want you. And that was kind of, you know, and it
the way
went
it
in
should
all
be.
directions.
Yeah, it's the way it should always have been. You know, that's a ugly part of our history that I wish we could
Yeah.
Absolutely.
fix. You know,
Well,
How long you been a member of the Grand Ole Opry?
almost 30 years, close
Wow.
to 30 years.
And that's affirmation itself, right? I mean,
That's
that
it's
must have
just-
been a good day.
Yeah, it's a great place. You know, it's what it does is it represents the entire history of
Yeah.
our country music, and not just a period where somebody's hot, somebody's on the top of the charts. You'll go out there on a weekend and see Jesse McReynolds or Bobby Osborne, both close to 90 years old, playing the mandolin.
Wow.
You'll see a kid that's 20 years old playing his first single. You'll see Connie Smith, who's been out there for 50 years. You'll see me. You'll see, you know, it's got
Connie
such
was Marty's wife, right?
Yeah, I mean, such a wide gamut of entertainment on a night that you couldn't, you know, you wouldn't see that anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
You know, that
But it
much
seems
diversity.
like they've been doing that for a long time. I love
Since
that.
1925.
Wow. I love that in the Ken Burns thing. It's like you can go do what you want during the week, but you make it back here
Yeah,
for Saturday
exactly.
night.
Well, in the old days, if you were an Opry member, you had to make a mandatory number of appearances during
Yeah.
the year, and they've dropped that. That doesn't make any sense anymore. But also, the other thing that a lot of people don't realize about the Opry is its real intention was not so much to promote country music, but it was an insurance company that owned the radio station,
Really?
and they wanted to try to find a way to reach rural places to sell insurance.
Really?
So what do people in the rural communities like? They like fiddle music. They like, you know, hillbilly music, as they called it. And so the first Opry show in 1925 was just a man with a fiddle playing fiddle tunes in a motel room in Nashville.
Really?
That's how it all got started, and it worked because
Wow.
people started buying insurance.
well, going back to
Buying
that,
insurance and flour.
that synergy of music, you know, Charlie Hayden and the Hayden family,
Uh-huh.
you know, they were playing.
That's exactly right. He loved country music.
Yeah,
I worked
he's-
on that record they did
Yeah.
with him, and you know there's somebody you. Once again, when you start having that perception of seeing somebody that's this world-class jazz bass player, you wouldn't think he has this great history and deep love for
Right.
country music and bluegrass music and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So,
But his playing, whatever he played in, you listen to Charlie Hayden, it's Charlie Hayden. I
Yeah.
could listen to him play all day.
yeah.
He's amazing.
So there's no place like the Opry for jazz guys,
Well,
other
yeah,
than these
you know.
festivals, right?
You know, I always, and I told Norman the other day, I never put a label on the music. I'm considered a jazz guy, but I have a catalog of 17 albums that has so much kind of music in it
Exactly
that I don't
right.
really think about. And it's with the audiences. I play a lot in Europe and South America and Asia. You go to festivals, there's people there that probably never even heard of Benny Goodman.
Sure.
You know, and they like what's going on. So I don't second guess the music or the audience. It's like what you said. I just play what I like.
Yep.
I play for the fan that lives inside me.
Well, people want to label everything. I mean, you know, if
Unfortunately.
you're
All you
an
do is
artist
limit. All you
that's
do is limit. When
too
you-
versatile,
yeah.
then you know that
You're
can be a
just
curse.
this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't figured out what I can do yet, but once I do, that's going to be dangerous, I think. You know, so I'm not sure, but let me know if you spot anything good that I ever do. So, so just tell us a little bit more about, you know, like. There was, I saw something, you know, a while back where you were playing with Clapton and stuff. I mean, there's another kind of idol in a different genre, but I mean, what a great guitar player. And his idol was J.J. Cale, who was a buddy of mine. And, you know, tunes like Lay Down Sally and stuff like that, that kind of
Yeah.
feel.
Swampy. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting how you learn your history. You don't just know your history. And it took somebody like Eric Clapton to hit me to who Robert Johnson was.
Right?
You know, and that's what happens in the way that you learn your history. And we met at the Grammys maybe 30 years ago. And I was sitting with Bonnie Raitt, and we were watching the Grammys. Ruth Brown was there, and we were having a great night. And all of a sudden, the lights are dark, and there's a figure in front of me. And I can't see the face or anything, and he sticks his hand out, and he goes, "Vince, I just want to introduce myself. I'm a large fan of yours." And he said, "My name's Eric Clapton." I go, "What?" It's dark, and so it was really neat to get to meet him. He said, "I just love your playing." And then about 15 years later, he started doing those Crossroads Guitar Festivals.
Right.
First one was in Dallas in 2004.
I was there.
Yeah.
That was great.
And so this was a couple years after my curve of kind of hitting the top of the charts and playing a lot of my records, and all that was waning. And I'm kind of going, "What's next for me? What's in store for me?" And I got a phone call from Eric, and I answered the phone, and he said, "Vince, it's Eric Clapton." And I said, "Yeah, sure it is." Who's yanking my chain? He's laughing. He goes, "No, it really is me." I said, "Well, whatever you want." The answer's yes. And he said, "No, I'm doing a guitar festival in Dallas, and I'm only inviting guitar players I like. Will you come and play?"
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
so just getting that affirmation and that kind of kindness was really powerful for me. He saw me for just what I was a musician, just a guitar player. And I've gotten to do all those Crossroads festivals. There's one coming up this weekend that we're going to do, and this will probably be the last one, more than likely. And that meant the world to me that I got to go rub shoulders with all those the
That's
token
amazing, yeah.
hillbilly, so
Yeah,
the country
well,
guy.
yeah, not exactly.
But it's been fun.
But let me ask you, because you were just saying, that was a time where in your career it was kind of at a little lower ebb. But I mean, you've been so prolific for so many years, and you've had stuff. I mean, do you ever get to a point where you sort of run out of ideas, and then all of a sudden, 6 months later, something comes and you're inspired and you're back and all that kind of thing?
Oh, I think so. I think creativity comes in waves. I don't think that's the thing, is everybody thinks you're this great songwriter and go, "No, you didn't hear all the bad songs I wrote. You heard a handful of the good ones, but there's a bunch that wound up in the desk drawer and never will be heard from again. And you can't write yesterday every time you put pen to paper, So you just kind of
I'd like to have
strike
just some of the bad ones that you
Yeah,
wrote. I'd
yeah.
probably, I could have a career with that.
I don't know if you could. There's a reason they're not very good.
That's funny you say that, like you're the token country guy on those things, because I know for a fact a lot of those guitar players in the Crossroads thing are like, "Wow, you should hear this guy on a Telecaster." And that's another thing that I loved about the Ken Burns thing. Sorry to keep coming back to it.
That's
but
right.
listening to you play and like listening to Marty Stewart sitting there with that mandolin, and you're like, wow, that shows a lot of people the tradition of the level of musicianship in bluegrass players, country players. I mean, it's so high, and there's.
And you were mentioning Crossroads, and my buddy Albert Lee has done that. And Albert's a good guy, and man, now there's a country guitar player. He gets the Country Guitar Player Award, and he's from a different country, but man, he can play the hell out of that
He can
stuff.
outplay all of us by a mile.
Man, he is something else, isn't he?
Yeah,
English people love country music, man.
I've known Albert since I moved here, and when I started playing with Rodney and I started playing with Emmy, Albert played so many of those records,
Yep.
Right.
and I had to play.
Albert's
I had to
words.
learn what Albert played, which was not easy.
That made you the musician that you are today.
Well, it helped a lot, but he might stand the tallest of them all. to
No,
me.
he is something
Absolutely.
else. Yeah.
I remember when I first started playing with Rodney, and he told Roseanne, he said, "You should let Vince play with you too." And she goes, "I don't think so. I kind of, and then Albert was gone, and she said, "Here's the thing. We did the first rehearsal and the first solo." She said, "You just torched it. You just torched it." And she said, "I couldn't give it to you." I said, "Oh, you got lucky." He just so then the next song said, "You torched it too." And she goes, "Okay." She stopped rehearsal. She goes, "I got to give it to you. I didn't think you could do this." And
Well, not many people could.
yeah, but it was,
And he plays a baritone guitar, or a 6-string bass, or whatever you'd want to call it. And I've never heard anybody. I oftentimes kind of wondered what that instrument was all about, because a lot of times it's sort of doubling a line or something like that on records, or one sort of distinct line. But when I heard him play that for the first time, I went, "That's what that instrument's all about."
well, he plays the way he plays, all this chicken picking kind of countryish style playing. he's to me, so far above the rest of us in the way that he makes the instrument dance.
Yeah.
His playing always dances. It's got this roll and this dance to it that nobody can touch.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's one of a kind.
But he's a great respecter of all those bluegrass musicians, right? That's where he copped a lot of that
We're going to
stuff.
play together at Crossroads.
Oh,
Saturday.
fantastic.
That's fabulous. You know, all those guys, you know, back in the day, you know, before the internet, everybody had to kind of, if you wanted to listen to a certain type of music, you had to maybe go to some far out record store to get the records that you wanted and all that. Now these kids, they can press a button on the internet and get whatever they want. You type in the most obscure thing and it pops up, and you know, it gives these kids such a tremendous head start.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, everybody that complains about it, I go, hey, we used to get where we were going by horseback. You wouldn't want to do that again, would you?
Yeah. Borrow a cassette from somebody. Yeah.
Well, it took a lot of hard work, you know. So, well, I just have to say, David Becker, Nick Dias, and the great Vince Gill, thank you guys so much. As this has been like, you know, one of the most remarkable podcasts, and I hope you people out there get it and like what we're doing, because you can get it wherever you get your podcasts. You can see it, the video of this, live the following week that it airs at the All Guitar Network. And it's really like a bunch of good friends talking, and you know, I wanted it to be something where it's not like a reporter interviewing people. I mean, I've seen some of these guys for many years, and I kind of feel like we have rapport, and I hope people get that. I mean, it just feels good having you around, and I'm glad that you're out here in California. You're not here as often as you can be, and David's always out on the road in Europe touring and all that kind of stuff. But you know, having guys like that, you know, just come by, and that's the one beauty of being in California and Los Angeles. If I was in some, you know, remote place, this could never happen, and I'm grateful that I've been so lucky my whole life.
We're all grateful that
the
you're
water
there,
in the
Norm.
hole, you know?
Well, you got old mates. That the neat thing about a community of music people is you can not see somebody for 5 years, 10 years, and you just pick up right where you left off. I've got some of my best friends I made when I was 15, 16 years old, and I still have them.
Yeah,
That's
Musician
the best
pals,
kind.
So.
Yeah.
And
all
the
good.
one thing that I really love about you too, Vince, is that, you know, you're idolized by so many people, but you're a regular guy. And to me, that's the most important thing there is to be a regular guy. I mean, be approachable. And, you know, when fans come up and they want to shake your hand or something like that, to acknowledge that. I mean, these are the people that, you know, I mean, listen, you've worked very hard at your craft and all that, but you have to be appreciative of the people that love you. And, you know, you don't want to disappoint those people, and you certainly don't. I mean, you're just one of those guys where, I mean, anytime you're around, you know, people feel warmth and all that. And, you know, and I feel it, and I really appreciate it. And when I called you to ask you to do this, you were Normando, you know, which is, I used to play highlight in Miami, which is kind of like a racquetball type game. It's a Spanish game. I used to play amateur highlight, and that was my name, actually, you know, for everybody had to take down the Spanish name. Normando. So, you know, when I call him on the phone, he goes, Normando, immediately, you know, so just a really cool thing, and I'm so grateful. And David, Vince, Nick, could you take us out with just a little bit something else? You know, you want to lead the way. And again, I'm just dropping the ball right on their head. Whatever happens
I'll
here.
follow you right off the cliff, brother.
Yeah. Well, we'll just do this.
Normando, where have you been?
Right here, my friend.
Oh, Lord Normando, where have you been?
Hola to all my friends.
Will you give me a good deal on this guitar, my old friend?
Anytime you like. All right, guys, I can't thank you enough. Thank you. This was a ball, and I love you guys for listening and watching this stuff. And Vince, I'll give you a deal anytime. And thank you for coming in, and I owe you big for this.
Yeah.
And thank you,
Thanks,
David.
man. That was
buddy.
great.
Pleasure.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me. Man. Cheers.
Peace and love.
No.